Now it's time for our gluten-free gravy. And today I'm going to make the one that I pulled out of a magazine that is the Sauvignon Blanc gravy. Now, you can use a non-alcoholic Sauvignon Blanc if you don't want the alcohol, although I will tell you that alcohol cooks off as you create it in a dish, and so it's not quite as dangerous. So I'll make sure that this is put up here on the screen so that you can see the recipe. There's a few things that I like to do ahead of time. I have my butter measured out right here, so we're just going to go ahead and put it in there on medium and let the butter start melting. And then what I typically do, I have my wine and some chicken stock put in here. I'm going to measure into this my flour. And as I've mentioned, to make it gluten-free, I like to use Bob's Red Mill tapioca flour. For me, it just seems to do the best job on my gluten-free. I like the taste of it. It's super easy to work with. I always like to put it in here and whisk it up ahead of time so that any of the lumps, although I will tell you tapioca flour, it's just super easy to work with, and it really is pretty much lump-free. So I'm going to have all of that set to go in here. I have my turkey broth that I've already made in here, as well as some turkey broth and the drippings that I scraped out of the pan that are here. I'll be using Trader Joe's coconut cream instead of heavy cream because it's what I have on hand today, and I like to test and try different things. So if someone were dairy-free or lactose intolerant, I could simply use some other substitute for the butter. You could even use olive oil and then the coconut cream, and you could make this dairy-free. Now, as the butter's melting, I'm going to begin to put in some of the drippings. And as you can probably see here, I have some of the rosemary, some of the different seasonings that were in the pan are still in here, and that's okay. I'm going to add these in, and then I can strain all of that out after I've made my gravy. But I like to cook all of that in there just like I would if I literally took the turkey out of the pan and started making the gravy right there with the pan that I had used. It wouldn't be perfect. There's a little bit still of skin and some turkey meat in there. Once it's all good and delicious and I strain it out, then I can throw that into my soup stock or do whatever it is that I want with it. But I'm going to add that in there. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and put all of this in there because I'm going to make lots of gravy with this. And then any gravy that I have left over, I like to freeze and use it along with just like I would soup stock. So now I'm just putting my flour and water in here just to stir around and get some other extra of that. Put a little bit back in here to get the rest of the flour. And we will warm this up, and then we'll be ready to add the flour. I'm going to put a little bit of salt and pepper in now, but I'm not going to put the full amount in because some of this was already seasoned as I cooked the turkey, so we don't want to overdo it. I know I can always put in a little bit, and then my herbs de Provence, or any herbs that you want. If you want to add in some extra sage, anything that you really like to use. Some people like tarragon. It really depends on your preference, and there's so many fun things you can do with turkey these days. I've made it with balsamic and put a little balsamic in my gravy before. It really is completely up to you, and it's kind of fun sometimes just to throw out all the rules and make things the way you want them. So our butter and our drippings are starting to get warm now. So now is when I'm going to start adding in the wine and the turkey broth, as well as my tapioca flour that's already mixed into this. So I'm just going to add this in and whisk it, and again, allow it to get good and warm and slightly bring it to a simmer. Now, I'm just going to give it the little taste test right now and see how we're doing with the seasonings. Not bad. It's going to be absolutely perfect once I get everything else added in, and then we'll know if it needs a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, or what exactly it needs. Now, the final step before we figure out if it needs anything else is to go ahead and add in the coconut cream. Whisk it around. That's going to make it just a little bit creamier. And again, you don't have to use coconut cream. You can use heavy whipping cream like the recipe calls for. But I like to change things up from time to time and just see how I can alter these recipes. If you haven't watched my whole Thanksgiving series, you can go to thanksgiving.lowertoxiclife.com and it'll take you right into all the videos, everything that I've made for this entire Thanksgiving season. As I mentioned, the recipe calls for Sauvignon Blanc. You can use any Sauvignon Blanc you like, or you can use a non-alcoholic. I love the Kirkland brand from Costco of any of their wines or alcohol because it's always private labeled and it's always a top name brand. So as the recipe says, pour yourself a glass first and then pour the rest of it into your gravy. That is optional and up to you. As it begins to thicken up, you can just add in some more broth or stock, or you can add in water, whatever you prefer. But you're going to let it boil lightly or simmer boil very lightly for about 5 minutes. Turn it off, taste it, and see how you do. All right, mine is ready to remove from the heat. I tasted it. We need just a tiny bit more. Sprinkle in just a little bit more salt. Stir it up, and now I'm going to strain off all the ickies. I like to use this strainer that has small but not super tiny holes in it and a stainless steel bowl. That's what I'm going to pour it into so that I can strain it off. My pan is still hot, so I'm going to use my mitts, and I'm literally just going to pour this in here and let it all drain through. Then I can simply pour it into my serving dish and put it on the table. Now, as I've already alluded to, I'm making this the day before Thanksgiving, and so all I have to do is get it out, reheat it, test the seasoning, add any extra water if needed, and I am good to go. Once I get everything strained out of there, I'm simply going to add this to my turkey stock. Nothing goes to waste. That is my Sauvignon Blanc gluten-free gravy. Happy Thanksgiving. Bon appetit. Don't forget to watch the rest of the playlist, subscribe, leave a comment, give me a like, and don't forget to grab my guide at lowertoxiclife.com.